Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. That's right, Cardinal Nation. We are back. Listen, COVID had us slightly at a little bit of a disadvantage for the last couple months, but guess what? We are back and we're kicking off our Black History Month edition right here on the CardinOLL podcast. Listen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment on anything you see anywhere that we are on social media. That's on Facebook, that's on Twitter, that's on Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever you see this podcast. Listen, don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us a comment. Let us know how we're doing. Let us know what you think, what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Listen, this is what I'm telling you, Foxhole Nation. We had a little hiatus, but we're back for our Black History Month edition, and you're going to be surprised at what we're doing. Listen, this conversation today is with the one, the only, the venerable Dr. Ricky Jones. You don't want to miss this episode. Listen, he is the chair, actually he's the longest sitting chair, and he is a professor for the Pan-African Studies here at the great and the amazing University of Louisville. Listen, and for our Black History Month edition, we're highlighting our DICE program here at the great University of Louisville. Listen, the DICE program stands for Diversity, Inclusion, Community Engagement, and Equity. That is what we're highlighting our degree program. So I brought in my great friend, the one and the only Dr. Randy Whetstone. He's going to be my co-host for the entire month of February. Woohoo! Shout out to Dr. Whetstone. Thanks for making this interview great. So listen, let's head on into the classroom. So do you know what I always say? Go get your pens, your pads, your notepads, anything you can take notes with to learn from the one and the only Dr. Ricky Jones. Let's head into the classroom for this podcast. Have a great day. Cardinal Nation, welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. Listen, don't adjust your screen. What you see is just right. It is 3 people on the screen. I am ending out season 2 phenomenally. This season, we have done a great job of highlighting Cardinal success. We've done a great job of highlighting the success of all our students connected to the UofL program, but it's fitting after 6 months in season 2, we have come to a completion, and it's great that we're ending in the month of February, Black History Month. That's right. This is the Black History Month edition of the CardinOLL podcast. And listen, I have done something I haven't done in season 2. I went out and found a co-host. The co-host for today is the one, he's the only. Some of you have had him in class as a student, as an instructor. Maybe some of you have even had him in class as a student because he's a UofL alum. He's the one, he's the only, he's the venerable, the one Dr. Randy Whetstone Jr. Dr. Whetstone, how you doing, my friend?
Man, I'm doing great, Dr. Owens. Man, I appreciate that intro. It's a pleasure just to get the chance to co-host as a part of the CardinOLL podcast. Black History Month is our month. And yes. So I didn't want to miss this, to say the least. So really excited about our episode on today and our esteemed guest that we have.
All right, listen, and this is something that I never do, right? I've never put the guest up before we even introduced him. But since I've already messed up shown the world who our mystery guest is for today, Dr. Jones, how's it going, sir?
It's good, brothers. It's good, man. I feel like I'm negligent somehow, because y'all got doctor and EDD up next to your names, and my joke just says Ricky.
Well, if you see him in the street, at least you know that's why they're calling you Ricky, Dr. Jones. At least you know.
Thanks for inviting me. It's an honor to join you, brothers.
Listen, this is a special edition. We're ending season 2 in February, Black History Month. We're bringing in some of the greatest and the best and the brightest minds to discuss a little bit of leadership, a little bit of learning, but a lot about our new track in the UofL program, our diversity, inclusion, community engagement, and equity track. We call that the DICE track. And we're doing that. We've created that because we know, one, it's a valuable skill needed in the workforce today, right? If you can't go on Indeed or LinkedIn or wherever you look for jobs, there is going to be a diversity, equity, inclusion specialist, trainer, manager, director. Listen, I don't want to say it's a hot job because I don't think it's going to be a hot job. I think it's a necessary and a needed job in the workplace. And so this month, we're going to highlight the diversity, the inclusion, the community work, Black History Month, equity, Anything along those lines, we're highlighting it. We're bringing in these experts such as Dr. Ricky Jones to come and talk to us about it and give us a little bit of insight of where we are, where we've been, and hopefully where we're going. But let me dive in and let me get the necessary little itty bitty leadership stuff out the way, even though that's a major component of what we do. But Dr. Jones, let me ask you this question. How is it that you define leadership?
Leadership, I think, is moving a group of people in a direction that's going to be beneficial not only for yourself but for them, and a direction that's going to be beneficial for the people that you serve. If you're not accomplishing those things, then you're not really engaging in leadership. There is no leadership without followers, and all of those followers and leaders have to have some type of mission that they're seeking to accomplish. So that's what leadership is to me. It's not some type of Papa Doc Duvalier type tyrannical thing. It's being able to encourage people to really buy in to some mission, to have them believe in something. So that's the way I look at it.
And so, clearly we know that there are good leaders, there's bad leaders. I think that's probably more subjective in some cases, depending on what, because typically a leader thinks that they're always going to be moving in the right direction. Sometimes they don't. They make missteps. They make mishaps, or whatever the case may be. But in your life, who would you say are some of the some people that kind of, using your definition, sit in that role of a leader?
Well, I mean, going historically, people who are able to stand alone first and provide an example. Frederick Douglass, that's a leader. When you talk about the time that he existed,
Right.
You move into the 20th century. Intellectually, Du Bois, had no equals. Even though Du Bois was incredibly cantankerous, Du Bois provided paradigms that people could follow. Wasn't necessarily a people person, though. Charles Hamilton Houston was an incredible leader, incredible educator, educating all these young brothers and sisters at Howard University, and then they move on to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund with them. A. Philip Randolph and what he did with the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters and his advocacy, looking at the very first March on Washington, and then that being used as the model that led to the actual March on Washington '63. That's leadership. Ella Baker, directing people, young people, down paths that are independent for them to build other organizations. So those are some examples of historical leadership. At the University of Louisville, the greatest leader I've encountered was the late J. Blaine Hudson, who I don't know if you brothers had a chance to meet, who's the first African-American dean in the College of Arts and Sciences and was the chair of the Pan-African Studies Department, who I kind of grew up under. He was a man that had people to follow him and even do things that they did not want to do, but they did them because they trusted Blaine. So, those are some of the examples of leadership for me, and hopefully we can get into some of the attributes, core attributes that I think those leaders have.
Yeah, I mean, let's think about this. Well, let me ask you this question before we get into the core attributes, because I think it's a good segue and it ties right in. What is, or how would you define your leadership style?
The first thing I'm going to do always is to show my people that I have honor and integrity. Let them know that they can believe what I say, that I'm never going to lie to them. I'm going to give them good news. I'm not going to try to make, mountains out of molehills, keep everything in perspective. But I'm not going to lie to them about bad news either. We have to take those things as a group. Two, I've always wanted my people, and I've been a chair for a long time. I'm the longest serving chair in the history of the Pan-African Studies Department. And I believe in that mission. I think the Black Studies, which is the most revolutionary insurgency in American higher education. Everything else, when people talk about DEI, they talk about Latinx studies, they talk about Asian descendant studies, they talk about women's and gender studies, all of that comes from the Pan-African studies, the Black studies, Africana studies model. That's what Black people have done, and that has to be clear, and I don't think folks give it enough credit. But departments like mine, that's the vehicle through which we serve the people. So I want my people, and I've always wanted them to know that I sit in that chair because I believe in that mission. I think people are more willing to follow you on that. Thirdly, man, and this is something I think people miss, I don't see myself as a boss. I see myself as a partner, as an advocate. I think that if your people understand, the people that you're leading, that you're going to first and foremost advocate for them. Certainly not always. If they wrong, you tell them that they wrong individually. You praise them publicly, you criticize them privately, you carve out space to have those honest conversations. But I think if people understand that you're their advocate, you're their partner, even if you make mistakes, and you will, right? They still gonna have your back. But if you always see yourself as a boss, and you behave in a tyrannical way, as soon as they have a chance, they gonna get you, and they should. And lastly, I think this is a lesson not just in leadership but in life. Don't be a narcissist. Don't be a person, as Paulo Freire said, who is trapped in this circle of certainty. If you go in thinking you know everything, then you can learn nothing. Don't play with democracy and collaboration. Don't give the illusion of democracy to your people. When you ask for their opinions, you ask for their input, you really have to be honest about taking it and being able to move off something at times and saying, I was wrong. I remember I told one of my ex-girlfriends one time, man, I said, look, I don't mind being wrong sometimes, but I'd be damn if I'm going to be wrong all the time. Right? And so it's why she's your ex-girlfriend. So I think it's the same thing with leadership. Your people, they don't mind being wrong sometimes.
Right.
But they ain't gonna be wrong all the time. And you as a leader, I think, have to be able to say you're wrong sometimes.
Right.
And so I think that type of partnership with your people, and certainly letting them know that you care about them. If your people know that you really, really care about them, just like with your students. I'm hard on my students, man. But they know I care about them. So I can get away with even talking to them in certain ways that a lot of professors can't, because they know I care about their well-being. So those are some of the things that I believe in. That's my leadership style anyway. And of course, when trouble comes, letting your people know that, you're going to be straight up out front and be stone cold gangster and ruthless with anybody who come into the door trying to hurt them and take what's ours. So that's always there. You can't have no weak back, right, to be a real leader. So that's my thought.
Okay, so I think Dr. Jones, you hit it on. I mean, I guess you did cover some attributes about having tough conversations, not being a boss. Are there any other attributes you wanna highlight? You want to talk about? You want to bring to the surface a little bit about leadership or being a leader?
That's about it for me. And I work things in with that core stuff. I don't think we can cover everything. I think certainly, being a leader, you understand. Again, you ain't always gonna succeed. And if you're taking on some real hardcore stuff, hard stuff like Black liberation, like what I've worked all my life to achieve, people talking about DEI stuff, and you look at a lot of these positions, they'll have the positions, but what resources do they have?
Correct.
What budgets do they have? How many people do they have working with them? Who are the people they're reporting to, right? And what happens if those people don't believe in the mission that they believe in? You're going to lose more than you win when you're in the spaces that our people in. So you can't, be discouraged. And so you just understand that you got to keep on trudging along until you get to the point where you're like, all right. And always be trying to train somebody up too, right?
Yeah.
Looking for somebody that's going to be able to carry that forward with you. But big thing is keeping your eye on the ball. It can't just be about you. It's got to be about whatever mission you actually believe in. If you don't really believe in something, I ain't going to follow you. I ain't going to follow you around the corner if you don't really believe in something. If everything's about you as an individual and vulgar careerism, I don't really want you in my space.
That's good. That's good. Can I ask you one question? It ain't even on the list, but it's all good though. I can't even put it on the screen. I can't even put it on the screen.
Let it flow.
But my question is this: as a leader, when you find you're a leader worth following. You got the backbone. You have the tough conversations. You turn around. As some people say, like John Maxwell in one of his books, a leader is when you turn around, somebody's following you, right? Yeah. I've heard people use that as an illustration as well. But you make a mistake. You fall from grace, right? Maybe it's in the news, maybe it's in the tabloids, or maybe it's just something, you just lost the respect of some of your contemporaries. How is it that you feel, what is the best way that a leader then acknowledges that mistake, that failure, that fall from grace, that loss of trust? How would you recommend, or if I came to you as a consultant and say, how do I get back in their good graces, Dr. Jones? How do I do that?
Well, the first thing you do is you build up some sweat equity with your people early on. right?
Gotcha.
You got to be because look, I'm not a cat who really believes in cancel culture. I believe in conversations, right? Because somebody makes a mistake, then I ain't down with all that canceling. I'm about engaging. But I believe in looking at people's track records, you know. So if you've done 50 great things and you got one thing that ain't that great, I ain't just pushing you aside. Like one of the greatest leaders in the African American community has been Martin Luther King Jr. Right? My Morehouse brother, he's considered our greatest graduate. But King has some inconsistencies. Smoked in private, not in public. Everybody knows the problems that King had with adultery.
Right.
You know, and people don't want to talk about, haven't wanted to talk about that. But I don't think that flaw in King, which let me be clear, is a flaw. We can't sit here and say, oh, adultery, cheating on your wife is okay, right? But does it eradicate all the other great things that he's done? So my thought is this: if you make a mistake as a leader, the first thing you do is you be honest about it. You know, you don't BS it. You don't try to massage it. You have a private conversation with your people, with your group, and then you tell everybody else what's happened, and then you try to work to get back from it. I think when you are dishonest about it, when you shady about it, when you quibble about it, when you equivocate, I think you extend the pain. One, and two, you damage your credibility even more. So look, all of us are gonna make mistakes. That goes back to that narcissism, right?
Right.
We all have to understand that we are not perfect, that we are going to make mistakes. And so you build up trust with people where you can come to them and say, just like with your lady, right? I'm sure y'all been through this. If you screw up, you go and say, baby, I did this. It was wrong. I don't want to lose you over it. Give me the opportunity to work back.
Right.
I wish I'd known that lesson when I was younger.
Golden nugget drop. There it is right there.
Free of
Hey,
charge.
Dr. Westo, you want to chime in on this? Anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you give, tremendous examples and, mentioned a lot of prolific figures along with the attributes needed to be a great leader. I do want to ask you though, Dr. Jones, when you think about the younger generations, what do you think the leader will look like or need to look like from a millennial generation or generation A, or if we look into the future, considering the next 30, 40, 50 years, what does that leader need to look like to try to get through some of the challenges that we face in the United States?
That's a good question. One, they're gonna have to be more nimble, right? Technology has sped everything up. And so they're gonna have to move a little bit faster. As people talk, it's funny, man. I was talking to my daughter who's in Gen Z. I'm a Gen Xer. And then we were reading up some stuff on her generation and how a lot of research says that their attention spans are about 8 seconds. And what I told her, I was like, well, babe, y'all were kind of born with cell phones glued to your heads and iPads and all of this stuff. And you understand social media, different technologies. So I don't think it's necessarily just that your attention spans are short. The positive spin on that is that you're better multitaskers than we were. The world was just slower. So I think they're going to have to be more nimble. But here's the key thing. And Brother Owens was addressing this a little bit earlier. When you talk about education, you talk about politics, you talk about social leadership, you talk about societal transformation. The people moving forward are going to be, they got to be adept at handling people who don't look and think like them.
Right.
One, we don't learn very much from people who think like us. We learn the most from people who don't think like us. That's why I like to engage conservatives. I usually beat them in debates, but I like to engage them, right? But the last thing is this: moving forward in this country, we now live in the most multiracial, multicultural, multi-ethnic America that we have ever seen. And that's not turning around. Okay. So some of these people out here who continue to work to keep places like Kentucky a white ethno state, they ain't going to be too adept at handling the future. They are not going to be able to deal with the blackening and the browning of America because that demographic change is not turning around, right? And I say the same things to people at the University of Louisville. If the University of Louisville is really serious, and maybe they're not anymore, the past president said that we aspire to be the nation's premier anti-racist university, whatever that means. You can't be a premier anti-racist university if arts and science is your largest college. And I just wrote about this. Your largest college has around 400 full-time professors. That is tenure track. Not the adjuncts, not the PTLs, but the tenure track professors. You got around 400 of them, and 24 of them are Black. 10 of them are in my department. 10 of those 24 in Pan-African Studies. And the rest of the university, other colleges, don't have that many because they're smaller. Right. So you got to decide what you want to be. So if Kentucky wants to be a white ethno state, if Louisville wants to be a city where white people are predominantly in control of it, in memorial, if the University of Louisville wants to keep the same racial dynamics that it's kept since it integrated in 1950, then that's going to be problematic. Not only are you going to have people leave, Black people leave, you're not going to have others to come because ain't nobody trying to be Ruby Bridges. So I think if you're going to be a leader moving forward, you better get used to dealing with people who do not look or think like you.
Dr. Jones, I can sit and listen. I try to keep our podcast to a certain number of time, but I clearly think that we're going to break that time today, and that's completely okay.
I'm sorry, man.
I can sit and listen to what you're saying. Oh, no, listen, you don't have to apologize for anything, because I think the takeaway from this is the information, right? It's not even about the time. The time, like you said, is somewhat inconspicuous, right? Because people can multitask. That's why it's a podcast. You can listen to this while you're walking, while they're driving. They're gonna be doing so many other things while they listen to this anyway. But I thought you brought up a great point when it comes to the difference in attention span, and this kind of goes into a little bit of learning that I want to ask one question about, because I noticed that when Horace Schultz, he left the Ritz-Carlton and he created what he called a super premium hotel. Right, he branched off the Ritz-Carlton, and what the Ritz-Carlton, what made them for a long time so attractive was they were able to engage you in 15 seconds, right? But then he created a new hotel called a super premium hotel, and they were able to engage you in 4 seconds, because he knew, like you said with your daughter, like if you don't say something to them within the first 8 seconds, I'm losing so much money, because they're on their phone, they're making other plans, they're doing something else. So the whole point of a super premium hotel is to be so engaged that they engage you literally almost every second. To a degree, it could be somewhat of annoying unless you tell them not to talk to you or whatever. But that just goes to show that even in hospitality, the hospitality industry, right, which is super engaging for what most people would say, because someone's always going to welcome you and thank you and give you a card or whatever the case. But they're even considering the time in which they do that. So let me ask this question: when it comes to, like, you as a professor and you're hard on your students, how do you know when the light bulb goes off versus when you know you've pressed them too far and they've checked out?
It varies from class to class.
Okay.
I kind of see teaching like coaching. I'm a sports nut as well, and coaches will tell you that different players are going to respond to different things. And so students are not uniform. Different ones are going to respond to different things. And so I have to try to figure that out as a professor. I'm going to have some students on these upper echelon kids who are going to be engaged no matter what. They're going to go hard. They're going to have that 3.5 to 4.0. They're very interested in the material. And, my population is generally self-selecting. So I ain't got to worry about them. I can kind of just roll the ball out there and they can hoop. They're going to ball. Then I'm going to have some at the far end, and these are rare, but I'm going to have some at the other end that I'm just not going to be able to reach. No matter what I do, I'm not going to be able to reach them, and they're probably not going to remain at the university very long. It's those in the middle, right, that are just kind of there. They're meandering. They don't know what they want to do. They don't know where they want to be. Those are the ones that I pay the most attention to, I guess, as far as the motivational stuff goes, and figuring them out and figuring which buttons to push. And look, sometimes I fail. And y'all know as professors, man, sometimes you're going to have a class that's just going to be on fire and you love to see them every week.
Right.
Other times you're going to have classes that's going to be a little bit of a struggle, but it's not a finished product. Kind of like my daughter's volleyball team, her club volleyball team. Season goes from January to June. That's going to be a very different looking team with the same players, but a very different looking team in June once they've had the whole season to play together, to mesh, to go through some failures and successes, bond with one another. That happens with classes too, right? And sometimes you'll have classes that you get to the end of the semester and you're like, damn, I'm glad I'm away from them because there ain't none that they gonna pull off like the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, you just give up. But that third one is very, very rare, you know. And so you want to the point for me is to get the most out of every student, right? To get the most out of every student as an individual, and to change with the times,
right?
You know, I've been at this professor's thing, man, for 25, 26 years. And so the students that I had when I started in the mid to late 90s, they're a bit different from the ones I have now. And so one thing that's great is to always open up again in that liberatory educational model from Freire. And I tell your audience right now, if you haven't read Pedagogy of the Oppressed, please go read it. It's one of the most important books for educators I think that's ever been written. And so I see myself as a teacher, but also a student. And so if your students understand that you're interested in them as individuals, but interested in their generation, interested in their culture, interested in the different stuff that they're bringing to the table, they're more attentive, and then y'all can learn together. So, you know, yeah, I push them, but I love them too.
But let me ask you this, since I got Dr. Whetstone on the line, what do you do when, or let me know if you did, when you run across this Kobe Bryant student? They're self-driven, they're self-motivated, they're self-reliant, they come in there prepared, they're ready. But they want you to push them to the peak of greatness every single day, every class period. How do you teach that student?
You asking me or you asking Randy?
I'm asking Dr. Jones, the guest.
I'm gonna pay attention to him. It's like OBJ. You know, I'm gonna get them the ball early. Now, one thing that I don't do in my classes, I'm not a lecturer. I don't like to lecture. You know, I'm going to engage. I believe in the Socratic method. That's the way I was educated at Morehouse. So I'm constantly engaging with my students. So if I got that superstar, I'm getting the question out to him or her early on. I'm working them in. We having those conversations. I'm pushing them, asking them questions. I'm challenging them about their point of view. You know, so even I ain't letting them become narcissists. I ain't letting them believe that they know everything. I'll play devil's advocate. If the whole class agrees on something, I'll disagree, even if I don't really disagree, because I'm trying to make everybody think. I tell my kids all the time, both collectively and individually, my job is not to make you think like me, but my job is to make you think. So that Kobe Bryant type student, oh, I'm getting in them. I'm pushing them, you know, and I've had a number of those. And guess what? I'm still in contact with most of them. Most of them are still reaching out. Hey, Doc, I appreciate you, man. Hey, Doc, I'm calling you. I need to call you about something. I know you're going to cuss me out about this. And yeah, I do cuss them out. So, you know, it is what it is.
Do you find those students, are they rare, or do they come like once a semester or once a year, or just kind of like sprinkle just like once every whenever?
Generally, every semester, I'm going to get a student that I can point out that has superior talent relative to his or her classmates. Every now and then, though, you'll get some that are like, Jesus, this is like genius level.
Right.
Every now and then, you know, like Philip Bailey, who writes for the USA Today now. Philip Bailey was one of my students I knew early on, genius level.
Gotcha.
And Philip talked about becoming a professor. And I told him, I was like, man, I don't know if this is for you. You might need to be a writer. Guess what? You want a Pulitzer Prize. Hodge Turner, one of my old students, and everybody knows him at UofL for playing basketball. Nah, it wasn't about basketball. Genius level. You know, genius level. So, you know, you run into cats like that. I thought Daniel Cameron too.
So you got your own little all-star list over there, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, and even though Daniel, I totally disagree with Daniel politically, but Daniel's a brilliant, brilliant cat, right? And I want to put that out there to show him a little bit of love. I ain't trying to cancel Daniel either, even though I can't vote for him.
Dr. Whetstone, it's on you, my friend.
Yeah, I mean, I love that it helps us to know as educators and really just as leaders how to keep that good, healthy balance, right, between the role that we have as well as our student or those who might be following us. Because in some cases, you know, as an educator, If we're not careful or not playing that devil's advocate role, in some cases, we might be feeding that ego a little bit more, so that when they leave our classroom or leave, whatever interaction we've had with them, they, in some cases, could be worse off than what they were when we had them, right? So I think working to keep that good, healthy balance of confidence, letting that mind expand and grow, but then our role as a professor kind of catching them to say, hey, think about this, consider that, or here's kind of your gap, right, in your thinking, I think helps them all along the way, right? Because students will be bold, and if not careful, they'll try to usurp the authority and take a classroom over, right? So I think the points that
Yeah.
you bring up are excellent and profound to not just education but leadership as well.
Yeah, and that's a different thing. The point you come about, people trying to take over classes. I hear those stories. That ain't never happened to me though. I mean, that ain't happened. And I let mugs know, like, look, bro, if you in my Tuesday, Thursday class from 1 to 2:15, and I literally have told them that. I was like, in here from 1 to 2:15, I'm God, bro. Believe that. So don't none of y'all come in here thinking that you're gonna take over. We're not gonna have that. So that's real. But you said something like feeding egos. Let me tell you something that I actually like to do, though, Brother Weststone. I like to feed my kids' egos, but I don't want to feed their embryo complexes. Gotcha. Those are different things. So I'll tell my students straight up, I ain't hiding it from them. I'm like, I'm going so hard on you intellectually that if you can withstand this and you can stand up to me, then once you get up out of here, you should be confident enough to stand up to anybody, especially. And this ain't saying that because I've had some fabulous white students. People ask me that stupidity all the time. Well, do white kids take black studies? Yeah, get up out of here with that. I have some white students that I'm very, very close to. So stop. But with our black kids at a predominantly white institution and the trash that they go through, I understand what black parents go through with their children. And my thought is always those black parents, in my mind, they're driving up to the gate of the university, right? And when they drop their kids off, they're saying to us as professors, I'm leaving my baby here with you.
Right.
I trust you to take care of my baby, that he or she is not going to be broken by this experience. Now, that's a whole nother show for us to get into, the very real and persistent racial dynamics in American higher education that we certainly deal with at the University of Louisville too. But I don't want those kids losing themselves in the backwash of white supremacy and racism that we're still dealing with in higher education, and certainly dealing with at the University of Louisville, and simultaneously creating as many white ambassadors in the vein of John Brown as I can along the way too. Because my white kids, they gangster, man. They'll tell you.
Oh, yeah. So, Dr. Weststone, I know you had some questions connected to our DICE program, connected to Black History Month. I definitely wanted to make sure we have time to cover all those questions with Dr. Ricky Jones today.
Yeah, man, because with me, it's always Black History Month, right? Every day from January 1st to December 31st, it's always Black History Month.
Yeah, absolutely. But, we've had a focus on in our program on diversity, inclusion, community engagement, and equity. So using this acronym DICE, and I've taken this spin to say that, when it comes to DICE work, it really is like a crapshoot, right? You don't know what you might get. You're gonna have to deal with religion and race and sexual orientation, perhaps all on one role. So when you think about DICE, Dr. Jones, tell me what's important about it to you at this stage, and what can we do as leaders to continue to fight the good fight as it pertains to this work?
Man, I couldn't be a DEI guy. And let me tell you why. Because the way DEI is constructed in a lot of places, it's one that kind of waters down Black struggle. And there's so many diversionary approaches to it, kind of like multiculturalism in the 90s, the way it was set up. I believe in what Antonio Gramsci talked about when he said that every group creates its organic intellectuals. And those organic intellectuals have to be advocates for that group. For me, Ricky Jones, I think God has chosen me to be an organic intellectual who primarily centers on Black struggle, because I do think that we have a foundational situation that has yet to be resolved. And I look at things that have happened with our people over time. Like when you talk about affirmative action, people don't get into that debate a lot anymore, but they'll affix Black folk to affirmative action when the reality of the situation is, and they never say anything, you know, when issues of affirmative action come up. But the people, the group, the single group that benefited most from affirmative action policies in America were actually white women.
Right.
And so I've heard some of the DEI conversations where, you know, institutions, organizations, companies have talked about their diversity, and they're quite often talking about white women. They ain't talking about Black folk at all, you know, or they're talking about Hispanic brothers and sisters, but they ain't talking about Black folk at all. Or they'll start talking about, you know, sexual orientation. They ain't talking about Black folk at all.
Right.
Now, I am a champion, an advocate, a believer, and a partner with all of our brothers and sisters from minority groups who have been marginalized. I can't be a Black person, right, in my mind, and be homophobic. I can't be a Black person and understand our struggle and be anti-Semitic. I can't be a Black person and get into all this anti-immigration stuff that's been going on in this country for a while. And we know nobody's talking about European immigration. They're talking about immigration from the South with our Mexican and other Hispanic brothers and sisters.
Mhm.
I can't be that person, right? But I also can't be the person who will take Black struggle when it is still real and meaningful and we're losing ground in so many places and have it wiped out. And so I think that it's very, very important that when people start talking about this stuff, because yes, it is a crapshoot, because here's another nasty thing that nobody really wants to talk about. What we've seen quite frequently when we talk about the Black dynamic, Black-white dynamic, and in Kentucky, that's still really the primary schism between Blacks and whites. We don't have an appreciable population of most other people. Our Hispanic brothers and sisters are rising. As one of my Mexican partners told me, he said, man, you got one baby. He was like, you falling short. He was like, all these people out here who shouldn't be having babies, brothers like you who can, you know, handle it financially and you can handle it intellectually. You need to have more children, not just one. So what the hell are you doing? And I was like, look, man, get up out of here. Let's have this drink and stop trying to tell me that I need more babies. I know how expensive that little mug I got right now is, right? So our Hispanic brothers and sisters are really, really catching up.
Mm-hmm.
But what is quite often happening in these places, and y'all brothers know it, man, and this is going to make some people mad. Stronger Black people have not been given opportunities in many of these organizations because they're seen as troublemakers.
Right.
So even when Black people are moved into certain positions, they've chosen the weaker, more cowardly Black folk who are more pliable and going to go along to get along because they scared. They ain't doing nothing for our people. They're not. Now, I give them a little bit more grace than I did when I was younger because I understand why they're scared, because racial persecution is really, really real, right? But I'll say this. All this talk about, you know, people say, well, we just got to have a seat at the table. Nah, not for real. It doesn't matter if a Black person is at the table if he or she is saying the same thing that the white people who've been excluding Black people for the last 50, 75, 100 years, he's saying the same thing that they've been saying for the last 50, 75, 100 years. It doesn't really work that way. So you're right. DEI is a crapshoot right now. And I'm waiting to see in multiple spaces how much these types of programs and positions are going to concentrate on the issues that I've been paying attention to all of my professional life, which is Black suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, one of those areas that has become kind of trendy here of late has been critical race theory. Right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk to us about it. I mean, what is critical race theory? And regardless of your field or discipline, because a lot of our listeners, I mean, they come from military, healthcare, business, education, nonprofit, the list goes on. Why should critical race theory be important to them regardless of their industry?
This ain't about critical race theory, right? And I've told people every time somebody over the last year brings up critical race theory, because it's used as a cudgel, right, to hammer us on something in the same way that Black Lives Matter has been used as a cudgel to try to just eviscerate Black organizations and organizations that speak about race. And race is real. Racial oppression is real. Institutional racism is real. Systemic racism is real. So these people don't know a damn thing about critical race theory, the ones who are making all these arguments, yet we have, almost 24 states passing laws or got bills on the table to outlaw the teaching of critical race theory. But it ain't really critical race theory because the bills on the table in Kentucky don't mention critical race theory.
Right.
And Jennifer Decker, one of the Republican representatives that is pushing one of these bills that's affecting Don't Sleep in K through 12 education and Kentucky public higher education. They never mentioned critical race theory. But Decker said she wants to outlaw the teaching of critical race theory and all of its progeny, right? In effect, what they're saying, we can't have substantive conversations about race and racism. So first off, this conversation is not about critical race theory. What this conversation is about is the maintenance of white supremacy in American education. That's what it's about. And there are people who want to maintain a particular perspective of European triumphalism, white dominance and superiority that's been around forever. And if we can't have an honest conversation about that, then we're not going to get anywhere. But all critical race theory is something that comes out of critical legal studies. It's taught in law school, in critical race theory, in graduate schools. Ain't nobody worried about critical race theory, man. And there were people who were really critical race theorists long before critical race theory was given a name.
Right.
All critical race theory says is that it makes very little sense. It is ineffective to study racism on an individual level. We must study it on an institutional level because that's where it really impacts people when you talk about life chances and power. So these folk literally, these anti-CRT folk will say things, they're using Martin Luther King Jr. again as a diversion, as a cudgel, saying he said that we should all be judged by the content of our character, not the color of our skin. Let me tell you something, liars. Martin Luther King Jr. himself was a critical race theorist. King constantly engaged race on an institutional level, not an individual one, which is all critical race theory did or does. So if people don't remember anything that I've said here, just remember this. Anti-critical race theory folk, they don't care nothing about critical race theory. Again, when you talk to them, most of them can't even have an intelligent conversation about it. These people are trying to maintain white supremacy, and they understand that education is a critical cog in that machine. So that's the deal with critical race theory and this foolishness that these people are pushing. And if they're successful in Kentucky, I might have to move because it will literally make what we teach in my department illegal. That's an intellectual Gestapo type of stuff there, man.
Yeah, you mentioned Dr. King, and this is a personal question of mine, Dr. Owens. I just thought about this, by it being Black History Month, but I agree with you, Brother Jones, that this is a lifestyle. This is every day. But I think back to Dr. King's letter from Birmingham jail, and when studying that, there were a couple of groups of people that stood out to me that he mentioned in that letter.
Came at him, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
Came at him.
It was some Christian leaders, right? It was folk in the Black community who had got educated. They maybe got a little wealth. They got away from the issues, the problems, and you had some in the community who just got numb to the issues and problems that were happening. I want to focus on that group who got educated, who got perhaps a little bit of affluence, who kind of wanted to get away from the Black struggle. I want to focus on them, and I want to think about their descendants or their kids or grandkids. And what I'm getting at is there this idea of quote unquote Black privilege? And let me explain. What I mean by
Charlemagne the God.
what I mean by this is your parents may have gone through a civil rights movement, or grandparents have gone through it, but they paved the way for you to be so far removed from what the Black plight and struggle has looked like historically. And I say that because I'm somebody, I grew up in the hood. I grew up in the ghetto, and I've had to check myself to say, Randy, everybody doesn't have to grow up in the hood to be Black, to understand Black struggles. But I think the problem that I've ran into are the individuals who they want to have a voice for the Black issues and problems, but it hasn't been a lived experience. You feel me?
Yeah.
And so it makes me wonder, is there this idea of Black privilege? And if so, what do we say to younger millennials, Generation Z, those in the Black community, to address this if they're totally removed, their lifestyle truly is whitewashed and removed from what we consider to be Black struggle?
Mm-hmm. You packed a lot in there. First off, let me approach it like this. I'm a kid who grew up in the housing projects of Atlanta, right? That ain't in the bio. My mother had me at 15 years old. First time she had sex, she got pregnant. Didn't meet my father till I was in my mid-30s. My grandmother raised me because my mother was 15 years old. She wasn't really ready to be a mother. And all her life, since, as long as I can remember, my mother struggled with addiction. My grandmother was basically illiterate, right? Raised me on a housekeeper's salary. So I went to hood schools, had to be a kid, who was fighting his way through whole nine, right? So that's a straight up gutter experience that I went through. Every Black person ain't gonna go through that.
Mm-hmm.
My daughter ain't gonna go through that. I mean, come on, I got a PhD. Her mother has a PhD. I'm a professor. Her mother's a dean at a private school here. You don't have to be physically in a particular place to be in a particular place ideologically. So we work very, very hard, right, to inform our daughter about that, because generationally, why would I want my child growing up in the same way that I did? And if we talk about everything has to be a lived experience, then we can't teach about slavery, right? Ain't none of us been slaves. Nobody can teach about slavery. You can't teach about the Holocaust of you Jewish brothers and sisters. Most of them were not in any concentration camps. So we can't even engage that. But I think what you're speaking of more than that is people who have checked out. Sometimes we get upset about elites, and we believe that their elite status necessarily makes them insensitive to what's going on in the Black world. I disagree with that. We've always had elites. Elites, Black elites have been around. Denmark Vesey, for instance. Denmark Vesey was a Black elite back in the 1800s. Denmark Vesey, one of the co-founders of Mother Emanuel, right, in Charleston. That Absalom Jones, Richard Allen, relatively speaking, they were elites. Frederick Douglass moved on from slavery to become a Black elite. The question isn't about you being an elite. The question is, what are you going to do once you become an elite?
Mm-hmm.
Du Bois struggled with that when he struggled with this idea of the talented 10th. Now, here's where we got to get serious. In Du Bois's day, Du Bois talked about the 10% of Black people who had the privilege of an undergraduate degree. Not like me and y'all. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
Y'all real doctors. I'm just, a Negro out here that they hated so much in grad school. They're like, let's give him this PhD so he can get the hell on because he causing too much hell around here. So I respect y'all, brothers. Y'all even dress better than me. Got on, your blazers and everything. But Du Bois was talking about the 10% of Black people that have bachelor's degrees back at the turn of the century. Mm-hmm. He was talking about how they were perfectly positioned to be the best leaders in the community. But then he discovered that most of them wasn't even invested in Black struggle. They were invested in the individualism because that's the way America trains us. That's the way we're socialized. And he reduced that number of Black elites who were actually interested in Black progress, the alleviation of Black struggle, from the talented 10th to the guiding 100th.
Mm-hmm.
So I think what we got to do, brothers, is to be very, very diligent and bold about challenging other Black elites to do the things that are best for our people collectively, because we still have so many problems from the cradle to the grave Black infant mortality, sky high. Undereducation, sky high. Uneducation, sky high. Unemployment, underemployment, sky high. Disease, sky high. Dying earlier, right? Disproportionate incarceration. You name it. 24 Black professors in the College of Arts and Sciences. Always overrepresented in the bad stuff, underrepresented in the good stuff. Now, the question is why? Either we are the worst race of people that God ever put on the planet, and we are individually and collectively malfeasant on a level that is absolutely incomprehensible and distasteful, or something's going on in this place institutionally that needs to be addressed to this day, and we can't afford to get PhD. Because guess what? Y'all are Black elites. You got PhDs, you got PhDs, EDDs, all these doctors, all these JDs, everything. And it ain't about us going to these parties, man. And just, drinking fine bourbon and wine and socializing and kicking it and finding the prettiest woman that we can get and not worrying about our people. So we got to challenge everybody that's gotten to our level. Like, okay, brother, what are you doing? Okay, sister, what are you doing? What are you about? Back to your initial question on leadership. What is your mission?
Right.
What do you really believe in? Because if you just believe in making money, getting that loot, getting that paper, getting that bag, getting that fine house, that pretty woman, or that wealthy man, and that 3-car garage, we can't use you. So, everybody ain't got to be in the hood, and everybody shouldn't be in the hood. We don't need all the Black people living on the same side of town. Like, we don't need all the Black people going to Morehouse. We got to be everywhere and bringing it everywhere that we are, planting the flag in South Dakota, just like we do it in South Atlanta, in South Carolina. We got to be everywhere. That's my thought on it.
I love that. Last question with this particular segment, and Dr. Owens, I throw it back to you.
Yeah, we way beyond that 35 minutes. We gonna be small out here.
Hey, when they getting gyms, it don't matter. When they getting gyms, it don't matter.
Yeah. When we think about, of course, the social unrest that happened, a couple years ago, and what I found to be interesting was the nation's response, right? So you couldn't be silent. A line was drawn in the sand. You had to take a side. And so what we found to be interesting and looking at different organizations, Fortune 500 companies, were all of these different initiatives, right, to address diversity work or inclusion or hiring, a large percentage of the BIPOC population and whatnot. How do we not fall into the trap of just jumping on a train that is trendy for a moment, but really not living the lifestyle day after day? And I say this because Black History Month, we get 28, 29 days where a bunch of organizations will work their optics. They're going to work their optics for the whole month. And then it's it. March 1 hits, that work is done. What do you say to that, Dr. Jones, to know that it's just not a trendy, cute train, this work, right? But that this should be a live lifestyle of embracing this work and the challenges that we see.
That's what happened in 2020, right? When you had Breonna Taylor killed, here in Louisville, you had George Floyd killed, you had Ahmaud Arbery killed. Supposedly there was this epiphany, this come to Jesus wake up moment in America. Oh, we see you. We didn't know it was this bad. Da 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 da. You had all of these statements from these universities across the country, right, about racial reconciliation, and we got to do better. Da 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 da. From all these companies. In fact, coming out of 2020 is where a lot of these DEI positions started getting created. But the question is, and I said it then, all this Black love going on right now, what's going to happen in 2021? You get the anti-CRT people, you get these positions created, but again, are they really resourced? What type of people are being put in these positions? What are the real outcomes in these positions, right? Are the Black people in these positions ideological? They ain't got to live in Carver Homes, where I came from, or the West End in Louisville, or Southside Chicago, or live in the Bronx or Harlem in New York. That's not what I'm worried about. I'm much worried about where your head is at than where you land your head. Mm-hmm. So these are the things that we got to pay attention to consistently. And if we don't pay attention to them consistently internal to the race, then we're done. Let me say that again. If we don't pay attention to them consistently internal to the race, we're done. I go through it a little bit with a co-writer over at the Courier Journal, and we cool, Scott Jennings, and he wrote a piece this week really about Black authenticity, because I was critical of Daniel Cameron. I've certainly been critical of Clarence Thomas and people like them, not just them as individuals, but the ideology. And Scott asked, who gets to decide the standard, in effect, on who is quote unquote Black enough? We as Black people do. If we cool with Clarence Thomas sitting on the Supreme Court and voting against everything that'll be beneficial to Black people, guess what? We're done. We're done. If we're cool with John McWhorter, talking all this noise, and we still gonna celebrate him, we're done. If we're cool with Ward Connolly working across this country to eradicate affirmative action that's benefiting our people, then we're done. We can't celebrate folk like that and expect white brothers and sisters or anybody else to come in and help us. And folk want to say, oh, well, you being racist, or you being judgmental. Some things deserve judgment. Some things deserve us to fight. Some things should provoke that. And if we're not willing to do that, then we are done. We're done. So DEI is the same thing. You're right. It's trendy. It can be a smokescreen, and it can be damaging too, because it's damaging if you take a Black person who don't care nothing about Black people and you put them in a particular position, and they doing even more hostile stuff than white people do, because they're so psychologically fractured. They want to show the people that they see as their masters. Here's what I'll do to those Negroes to show you how worthy I am. Right? I mean, they are living, breathing Uncle Ruckus type cats. And if we ain't willing to call that out, we're done. And we got to get beyond, it's the Black revolutionaries who have moved us forward, right? Mm-hmm. King was a Black revolutionary, ex-Black revolutionary. Ida B. Wells, Black revolutionary. Frederick Douglass, Black revolutionary. Harriet Tubman, Black revolutionary. Harriet Tubman, that woman said, I have reasoned it out in my own mind. I will be free or I will die. Those are Black revolutionaries. The Black revolutionaries have been the ones who have moved us forward. And now, if we see a brother or sister with a revolutionary spirit, even internal to the race, people want to say, oh, he crazy. You damn better be crazy out here if you go, change anything. So that's my thought. All this trendy stuff, I'm with you, Brother Whetstone. We have to be very, very aware of that. Again, going back to your initial question, once again, about leadership, Brother. What is your mission in life? What is your calling? What do you actually believe in? And if you ain't got that to guide you, then you're going to get lost. And if you're in a leadership position, whether it be DEI or the Supreme Court or the Attorney General's office, you're going to get lost and you're no good to your people.
Absolutely. That's excellent. Dr. Owens, we're in the final stretch, man. It's your world.
Nah, man, let's go in, man.
Y'all got me out here, man. I'm about to say, you put me in a tough spot. That's a horrible spot to be in to try and close it out. But after you've given us all these golden nuggets, Dr. Jones, like we do like to have a little fun, end on a little bit of a light note, kind of a light note, I guess, and have a little fun with our guests, right? We have heard you express and explain and tell us, but now we want to get a little bit of insight into the mind and the inner workings of what goes on in that cranium of Dr. Jones.
So you don't want to do it, man. It's a scary place, bro.
Hey, we're gonna bring our flashlight and some breadcrumbs, and we're gonna be all right.
All right. Go, let's do it.
So this segment is just what we call rapid fire. I just got 5 quick questions. You can answer them as fast or as slow as need be, but it is rapid fire. So pretty much the first thing's off the top of your head. And just let us know a little bit. We don't got to go into the deep annals, but just give us the surface of what's going on.
All right. I'm scared. I don't know what you're about to ask.
I know. I'm glad. All right, rapid fire.
All right.
Question 1. If you could pick one word and one word only that would describe your life so far, what would it be and why?
Triumphant.
Got him on the first.
Triumphant. Because from what I came from, I've triumphed.
Okay. Next question. Whoops. Here we go. What are 3 non-negotiable characteristics that anyone on your team or tribe has to have?
Intelligence, you gotta know what you're doing. Some commitment, you gotta believe in something. And fearlessness, can't be scared. I don't want no cowards with me. No cowards, no fools, man. Because cowards will leave you, and fools, well, they just do foolish stuff. So intelligence, commitment, and fearlessness.
Got it. Love them. No one's ever said those 3, by the way. Next question, rapid fire. What is your favorite dessert?
Sweet potato pie, man. I'm a Georgia kid. Sweet potato pie. But I love my grandmother's sweet potato pie, so I ain't had none as good as her since she died in 2009, but it's still sweet potato pie. And a good smelling woman. Did we lose Brother Owens, Brother Westone?
You there? I think we're here.
Look like he's struggling back. All right.
He may be coming back. I'll go ahead and ask a question.
All right.
So if you could do your career over again, what industry would you have worked in?
This one, education, higher ed. It is one of the best decisions I've ever made. Bar none. I love my career. I don't love some of the administrative bureaucracy of higher ed, but I have being in a classroom with students is my favorite place to be. I love to write. I love to think about the stuff. If I had to do something else right now, I would probably be like a sports commentator, like on one of those ESPN talk shows. Yeah, I could do that. But this is my favorite thing. I've been blessed to have made a good choice in this.
That's good stuff. Go ahead and give Stephen A run for his money then.
Right. Too late now, man. I had to build up from the bottom.
Last rapid fire question. If you could sit with your 13-year-old self, what would you tell him?
At 13, I'm in 8th grade. Whoo. I would tell my 13-year-old self, don't try to predict anything. Like it's gonna be all right. Flow with it. You know, because at 13, at 8th grade, I was given this ABC scholarship. I'll tell you that story. A Better Chance scholarship to a very ritzy private school, boarding school in New Hampshire. And I wanted to leave home, man. I really wanted to leave. I wanted to get out of the projects, had a lot of, strife in my family, a lot of violence in my neighborhood, all of that stuff. And I wanted to go to this school, and they were giving me this full ride. And my grandmother told me no. My grandmother was like, I don't even know where New Hampshire is. And I cannot send you up there with those people because I can't get to you. And man, I cried. I cried. I was so heartbroken. And if I could talk to my 13-year-old self, I'd be like, look, man, this is not the first disappointment. The only disappointment you're going to get. It's going to be all right. God going to create a path for you. And so that's what I would tell my 13-year-old self, not to get too wrapped up in the disappointments, either then or later, to explore life and know that it's going to be all right as long as you work.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Owen, you want to close this out?
Man, he got a doctorate, Dr. Whetstone.
More questions, right?
But he over there with some really, really bad internet. So, Doc, you're an elite cat with some project internet, Dr. Owens. You need to get your stuff fixed.
It's the storm. It's the
storm. All right.
Storm. I'm in the storm. It ain't me. It's the storm.
Yeah. So you say.
So I go. I vast because this is. I think. So I say, if you could sit with anyone for 1 hour, dead or alive, who would it be?
If I could sit for an hour with any person, dead or alive, who would it be and why? Malcolm. Yeah, I would sit with Malcolm. And I have to, it's like a 1 and 1A. I would sit with Malcolm 1, and if I could get 2, it would be James Baldwin. Malcolm, because I think Malcolm is the epitome of Black manhood. And Baldwin, I pattern a lot of my writing after Baldwin. So smart, so brave, so incisive. You know, so if I could sit with somebody, it would be those 2 cats. I know a lot of people think that I would say King because I went to Morehouse, but nah, it would be Malcolm and Baldwin, and then King.
Nice.
And wait, and then let me say this too. Then my grandmother. I would love to spend another hour with my grandmother if I could.
Nice. Okay, that's a good touch. We'll get on an empathetic, sympathetic note. I like it.
She was my girl, man.
Here's our real final thought. On a mountaintop, you had the megaphone. You are the person that everyone is listening to. All eyes on you. What would be your wise counsel that you would shout from that mountaintop that you want everyone to hear as we move strategically, purposefully through 2022 and beyond?
What is wise counsel that I would shout from the mountaintop for everyone to hear? Fight till you can't fight no more. Fight till you die. That's what I would scream from the mountaintop. The more of you that will fight, the few of you will be in danger. When you leave 1 or 2 or a small group of brothers and sisters out there by themselves, they are in danger. But the more folk that are willing to stand up and fight, the better it will be. That it will be. I would just scream, fight. You know, like that Fred Hampton speech where he just says, "I am a revolutionary" for like 20 minutes. I would just scream, fight till you die for like 2 hours. I am a revolutionary. Brother said it over and over and over. And that wasn't just in that movie. I mean, he did that in real life. And the crowd is just getting hyped. I just screaming, fight till you die. Fight till you die. Yeah, over and over.
Yeah, that's excellent. I think Dr. Owens, he may have froze up again, but you know, as always, man, I can't put into words, you know, Brother Jones, what it means for you to just take out the time and to talk with us. Our first episode of Black History Month. So thank you so much. Are there any final thoughts, any final words you want to leave with the audience?
Look, let me say this. I love you, brothers. Thank you for reaching out. Anytime you need me for anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. I mean, I ain't that much older than y'all, but I see you as baby brothers who are doing so well, and I'm so proud of you. You know, please keep doing that. You let me know that it's easier for me to retreat into the background eventually with my lady, a good glass of bourbon, and watching some football, and I ain't got to do nothing but let y'all handle it. So much love to y'all, man. Even to Brother Owens with his janky internet. You know, we've been all right. So, you know, man, that's how I would close it out.
Well, appreciate that as always. It's because of you that, you know, persons like me, Dr. Owens, we feel encouraged and even more bold to be the educators that we're called to be, because, you know, you leave, you know, a great legacy and a shadow that we can learn from, glean from, and embrace as we all progress and move forward. So, brother, thank you. From the bottom of my heart. Well, that is it for this episode of the CardinOLL podcast. First episode with the one and only Dr. Ricky Jones, Black History Month. We look forward to the other episodes that will come up in the weeks to come. So stay tuned. We have some guests in the politics world, historic world as it pertains to just African-American roots. So throwing out some teasers out there. So tune in for the next episodes. But until then, peace, love, and soul, as they will say. So we'll catch up with you next time.
And fight till you die.
Fight till you die.
All right, brother. Take it easy.
All right.